Hello and welcome to Woke Watch, an ongoing series of videos where I find woke stories and content from the four corners of the internet, and together we can pick them apart to expose woke ideology for the bullshit it truly is. Today I'll begin with a question. What do chess, music theory, using a knife and fork, basic spelling and grammar, mathematics, the cosmos, the heavens themselves, and milk all have in common? Well, according to the woke, they're all rooted in white supremacy. I've covered all of those in previous videos, but now there's something else, which is apparently as rooted in white supremacy as being a card-carrying member of the KKK. I'm not going to explain it though. I have a TikTok which will explain it for us.
As a racial justice advocate, I'm often invited to give talks or to do workshops where I talk to white people about race. A big part of my praxis is to offer real-life stories, examples, that type of thing, that help white people to be able to identify white supremacy in everyday life. My husband's family is white, and I often use the cultural differences between my family and his family as a way to help white people see their whiteness. There's one example that I use that always gets a ton of pushback. My husband and I were late to our first Thanksgiving with his family. I say late because it started at 12. We got there at 12:10, but whenever we got there at 12:10, everybody was already sat down and eating. I didn't know that. I use this illustration to point out that different cultures have different understandings of time, lateness, and what it means to be polite. Without fail, a white person will push back and say that lateness is impolite. I always use this as a teachable moment. I usually ask a series of pointed questions that challenge their assumptions. Sometimes it takes a lot of work, but by the end they're able to identify how white cultural dominance works in this one small area of life, which opens the door for them to start peeling the onion.
Yes, punctuality is apparently a form of racism. Now, I need to put my disclaimer in here. In the same way that I don't speak for every white person, just myself, I don't think that that woman is speaking for all black people. In fact, I think most of it is just her excusing her own fucking laziness. Can't be bothered to turn up on time. Help, I'm being oppressed. And I'll take the easy shot first. Imagine reversing the roles, because to me, saying that she needs to educate people on their whiteness is incredibly condescending. If I went to any other ethnic group and said, look you lot, this is what's wrong with you, I'd be doing 20 years in prison. However, maybe there's something in it, because I'm a white guy and I would rather be half an hour early to every appointment and just wait in my car than be 1 minute late. Because to me, if someone has set their time aside to spend time with me, turning up late is incredibly rude. And not only am I white, I'm also English, and I will choose death over appearing impolite. But let's be realistic. If I'm late turning up to my job, my pay will be docked. If I were consistently late, I would lose my job. If I'm late making payments on the mortgage, I'd lose my house, and before you know it, I'd be homeless, sleeping on a park bench, sucking off old men in darkened alleyways to pay for my newly acquired heroin addiction. That was a bit dramatic. Anyway, in our friend's tale, she said they were only 10 minutes late to Thanksgiving, yet everyone else got there on time. If I'm a guest in someone else's home, I abide by their rules. I don't turn up and then try and impose my will upon them. Never have I seen the race card being played so blatantly. But this is wokeness, where playing the victim is actively encouraged. Of course, whiteness, that's frowned upon. In fact, me, a straight white man, I'm the devil incarnate. But let's go with the idea. Let's say that being on time is rooted in white supremacy. Why does that make it a bad thing? Because without it, the world would be in fucking chaos. Imagine putting on the evening news at, say, 9 o'clock. The camera cuts to the studio and the newsreader sat there with his feet up on the desk, smoking a fag. For Americans, a fag is what we call a cigarette in the UK. So smoking a fag is smoking a cigarette, not shooting a homosexual. So the newsreader sat there and he looks at the camera and goes, fuck it, I'll read it in a minute. I'm not ready yet. Sporting fixtures would be very different. Say on a Saturday afternoon, Premier League football kickoff is at, I don't know, 3-ish. And if you don't like it, you're a racist. And air travel would be much more hazardous if pilots decided to take off and land whenever it suited them. Say if you went to Manchester Airport and there were 737s just weaving round each other on the way to the runway. pilots waving each other past on the radio going, "You're all right, mate, I want to finish this book anyway." Or coming into land. If a pilot came over the tannoy and said, "Look, they've told us to hold, but to be blunt, I want to land now." Worst case scenario is we have a documentary made about us. The bad thing being it'll be on air crash investigation. And if the people who work on production lines decided to start when they felt like it, so rather than 6 a.m, a few come in at 10 past 6, the entire line would grind to a halt, which would lead to more automation. AI would become more advanced more quickly, and in a matter of months we'd be slaves to our robot overlords. Just because that lady can't be bothered to get to dinner on time. Yet I'm still wondering, is it a white thing? And if so, why? Well, I'm a Brit, and historically we were a seafaring nation, where timekeeping is very important. In fact, that's why in Edinburgh the 1 o'clock gun still fires every day. It's to allow sailors to set their timepieces. Yet, in thinking that, I was reminded of a tweet I saw a couple of years ago from a very angry woman who said that all white men should be put on a boat and pushed out to sea. And I thought, no, that's a really bad idea. That's where most of history's problems come from. That's empire building. If you got all the white British guys and put us on a ship, by the end of the week we'd have India back. Anyway, as I said, wokeness is in part about victimhood, rather playing the victim to become the aggressor, such as turning up late and then blaming everyone else. But there's a TikTok which went viral at the end of last year, which is now coming up. Because if being punctual is truly about white supremacy, then it shouldn't affect people the same colour as me.
So I just got yelled at for asking a very reasonable question. So I'm applying to go somewhere, and I just wanted to know, are there accommodations for people who struggle with time blindness and being on time, you know? And then the person I was with interrupted and acted like I was asking something else, and then when we were done, they actually started yelling at me and saying that accommodations for time blindness doesn't exist, and if you struggle with being on time, you'll never be able to get a job. You know, provided you're trying your absolute best to be there. And then they're like, your stupid generation wants to destroy the workplace. And yeah, I think that a culture where workers are just cut off because they struggle with being on time, when there's other solutions that we can look to, I think that just anybody who thinks it's okay to just treat people like that, yeah, that culture needs to be dismantled. And then I asked that person, how can you feel good about yourself upholding this kind of system? And then to think I'm entitled. No, if people think it's okay to treat others like this, that's entitlement.
Time blindness. Trying to pass off being bone fucking idle as some type of disability. That is full-on woke victimhood. Crying and shaking whilst throwing a tantrum like a toddler. Because make no mistake, most of these people haven't progressed emotionally past that point in infancy. Saying that society has an amount of entitlement whilst demanding everyone else bends over backwards to accommodate her. I can't imagine being so self-absorbed, so self-obsessed, that I demand society, all of its rules are ripped up and rewritten just to accommodate me. Love, buy a fucking watch. So once again, we have woke ideology, inventing a problem that doesn't exist and then making a big deal out of it. Because not being able to turn up on time isn't an indication of an oppressive society picking on people who've made up their own disabilities. And it doesn't mean it's a form of white fucking supremacy. What it does mean is people need to be responsible for their own actions. For example, I know I can record this entire video before it gets dark because I took the time to read at what time the sun sets. That was a very ranty video. However, if you enjoyed it, please do like and subscribe, and as ever, thanks for watching. Hello and welcome to Woke Watch, an ongoing serial fuck it, in that person's house. I will respect their rules and traditions. In the same way that you shouldn't move to, say, a Christian country and then no, don't get into it, Dan. Racism in all its forms is completely vile, and anyone of any skin colour can be racist. Isn't that fucking obvious? That punctuality is a form of what bollocks to it is a form of white supremacy, then by its very definition, fucking what is wrong with me today? The farmers joined in.